Hello lovely stitchy friends, I'm Kat and I'm delighted to welcome you to my channel Catkin and Lily, where we talk all things cross stitch. So today I have a stitch with me video and I'm working on the Sorceress by Joan Elliott. So I have that here. Now you'll have seen this gorgeous project if you've seen any of my regular floss tubes. I will pop in a picture of what she'll look like when she's finished. Now I started this project on the 5th of March 2024 and I've picked this to show you today because I often get queries about how I choose what bit to stitch when I'm working around a pattern, how I move around, what I choose what to stitch, how I track my progress, and all about my stitchy setup. So I thought I've moved into, actually I think, first of all, I kind of need to unroll this a little bit and show you, don't I? It's going to be a bit difficult for me to show you everything on here, but I will unroll so that you can get a little bit of a look. Let's move that slightly. Let's see if I can show you what I've been working on. So I've worked all of this bottom section, all up here to the chair, and then I've worked up on this side as well. Now over here, there's a little box that's sat on the chair seat and it's got quite a few colour changes, a few different bits in there, and I thought that would be really nice to stitch with you guys and just show you how I'm going to do that. So let's roll this back up again. So you'll see this is how I work. I'm going to roll it up. I'm using my favourite little sewing clips. I'm going to use those on the ends. So I'll pop one in on each end just to keep that together. So I've got a roll at the bottom. The top is rolled as well, but it's just unrolled a fair way so that I can kind of have a nice working area on my lap. So I'm stitching in hand. I have talked a bit about that in the past. Let's roll that just a little bit more there. So this is the bit we're going to work on. I will zoom in a little bit when I show you that as well. And yes, I'm sat up on the sofa here that's my feet down there. So I'm sat with my legs tucked up on here. Now, I also want to say up front that this is very much not a this is how you should stitch video. I'm just going to show you how I like to do it, what works best for me and for my brain. And we're all different, so we're all going to work in different ways, but I just thought it might be fun to show you. So to set the scene as well, you can also see, and you may know, that I like to work from the bottom right of a pattern, and I like to work up and to the left. So that's how I've been working all of this. So that's how I'm going to be working this section here. I'm going to be working it sort of up and across that side. You can see I've made a start here. I don't really like to leave gaps when I'm working, so I will try and work it consistently going across. It's unavoidable sometimes, but as a rule, I'll try not to leave gaps. And I like to work all my stitches in exactly the same way. You'll see that as I start to stitch. And all of this is in pursuit of one goal, which is to have neater stitches. Again, this won't be the same for everybody. You won't work the same way to get neater stitches necessarily, but this is just what I find gives me the neatest finish. Now, I do also want to show you, I have got my paper pattern here because I did want to talk about how I track my progress. So I have got, and I know obviously I don't want to show a lot of the pattern, I've just got the little section here that I'm working on. So hopefully that should be all right to include on here. And so there's the corner that I've already worked in here. And most of the time I'm going to keep this mostly off to the side and just refer to it. But I did want to show you the bit that I'm working from, and that yes, it is a paper pattern. I will talk more about that later. So I think we should just get into some stitching, and I will talk a lot more about all of this as we get into that. So let me get myself set up here. And I think for this, let's zoom in a little bit more so that you'll be able to see, hopefully see what I'm doing. Try and work out exactly what's a good level for you to be able to see. Yeah, hopefully that's going to be okay. So you can see I've got one thread hanging out here. This was a grey thread that I've got on here, and I've left this because in the middle here there is some black thread. So let's get started on that one. I've got my threads here on my floss drops. You're not going to see a whole lot of this. Is going to get a bit funny with the zoom on here. Hopefully it's not going to go too much in and out, but it should be good for the stitching. So I have prepped a few threads, so hopefully we can do a bit more stitching and less thread pulling. So I'm going to start in this black section here. Should be able to do a loop start from the front. Do you know what? I think that might be zoomed in a bit too much actually. When I'm moving this, I think this might end up... No, that's too much. That's in, not out. Okay, let's try that. This is the worst bit of these videos actually, is trying to get the zoom level. I'll keep an eye on it as we go, and I will try and keep this in the middle of the camera for you. I apologise, this is only my second ever stitch with me, so if I end up wandering off the camera with my stitching, hopefully I won't. So as I say, I do like to work from a paper pattern. Yes, that's why I actually quite enjoy working from a paper pattern. Maybe I'm a little bit old school with that. It's not that I don't ever use apps, but I don't know. There's something about working from the paper pattern, unless it's super complicated, that I quite enjoy. I can mark it off as I go. It's kind of a bit more portable as well. And I guess if I'm not too worried about the stats, which I'm honestly not, I'm not that bothered. They are quite fun to have, but mostly not something that I'm too worried about. Then, yeah, working from a paper pattern, I find it perfectly easy. Now, I will make a working copy of the pattern. So I have for this one, what I'm working off of, I've scanned all the pages of the pattern, printed those out, and then stuck them all together to make one huge chart. And that's what I'll work off of. I'll just fold it all up so I can see the bit that I'm working on. And obviously for today, I've covered up some of the pattern as well. Let's just make sure I'm in the right spot here. Yeah. I'll leave some little bead gaps. And I said I don't like to leave gaps, and you can see there are some little gaps in here. But those are for beads, so that's totally fair. And I'm actually going to leave a couple more gaps in there for beads as well. So yeah, paper pattern, and I just mark it off with a pencil. Although it sort of depends on the bit that I'm working on. So for this pattern, I've got bits that I have marked off. So particularly when I was working on areas like on here on the dress, to keep track of where I am, it's an awful lot easier to actually mark it off. But for an area like this is really easy to see what I've stitched and what I haven't stitched. So I actually might not even mark it off. I think it just depends on the pattern. So I usually railroad the top half of my cross stitches, which I'll show you a bit more about that in a minute, because I do enjoy doing that. But for black, it's actually really hard when you're stitching black thread. It's really hard to see to railroad it, and you can't really see the difference as much. So sometimes I have to admit, when I'm stitching black, it's the one time that I might decide not to bother railroading. So the one occasion when I definitely will use an app, and I use Pattern Keeper, is for any really huge full coverage projects. I usually only have one of those on the go at any one time. And yeah, that one I wouldn't want to try and do on paper. I think the one I'm working on at the moment, so that's my Chromatic Dragon project, that is, I think, about 200,000 stitches, and obviously there's lots of confetti in there, and yeah, definitely don't want to try and work that one from paper pattern. But everything else, I think everything else is pretty much, I don't think I have anything else that I've used an app for. So that's that little black section done in there. Now I'm just debating whether I finish this thread, or I think I'm going to finish it, because the next bit of black, there's a row along here and a row along this way. Well, I'm not going to get to the row along here for a while, and when I do the row this end, I'm going to want to start from that end. So I think, to be honest, I don't want to carry my thread that far. I'm just going to end that. I don't always decide up front whether I'm going to end the thread or park it. I'll kind of decide as I go. It's almost like I'm making it up as I go along, really, isn't it? So now I can take this back again, because I've got grey to stitch on the top area. Of here. So now there technically is a small gap, as it were, over here, but it's very minimal. But I think I will have to make a decision when I get to the top of this section. I'm going to have to make a decision exactly where I take my thread to do the grey stitches on the other side. And this is where making all the stitches in exactly the same way kind of comes in. So it doesn't matter how I'm stitching, I pretty much try, at least on big projects where I want it to look really, really nice, and something like this kind of fancy lady, I want to make all my stitches, they're always going to go from top right to bottom left, and then top left to bottom right. So I'll try and make all of them that way. So having reached the end here, I've got some stitches down here, but because of the way I like to work them, I actually really want to start from down here, but my thread's up here. So I want to start this bit from here. So I actually think I'm just going to run my thread. I've just run it under here so that I can keep stitching. Kind of in my preferred order. So I will run my threads around a little bit. You'll see as I'm working on here, I mean, you can see the back on this bit here, and you'll see it as I turn the project back and forth. And I'm not the most picky about how my back looks. I do like it to be neat, but that doesn't mean that I won't run threads as long as I can catch them down. As long as it's fairly flat. That's, for me, that's the real thing. It's not about where you take your threads or anything like that. It's just about, does it stay fairly flat? What I want to avoid is any lumps and bumps. And as long as I can do that, then I'm pretty happy with it. Oh, extra stitch. Well, that won't be the first or last time, will it? Now, this is what you shouldn't do to unpick, is come back up the hole you've just gone back down. But I don't take my own advice on that, and I will still do it. Right, I think if we just have a little compare to that, I've done, yep, that's all looking pretty good. So as I say, I don't think I'm going to mark off on here. You can see, I will show you actually, I've got my needle minder, beautiful needle minder. This is from Cape Blandford, in case anyone's interested. I thought it just matched the project super perfectly. And if I was going to mark this off, I have just got a pencil, and I would just be marking through. It's not the most visible with pencil, but I could be using a highlighter or a pen, but it's good enough. And I don't mind using the pencil. So that is that bit done. And let's see, I think I'm going to run through this way. Sometimes when it's like this, it's trying to find some threads to run under. Again, this is where you don't want to make it all kind of lumpy bumpy. So that's that bit done. So where should we work next? I think let's come and work. So I'd have a choice at this point. I can either work down into this pink section here, or I could go up and do that black line and work up there. Let's do this pink section. In here. So all my floss stops have got the numbers and symbols on them, so that I can really easily pick the colour that I need. And my threads are pre-cut to 1 metre lengths, and then I've actually folded my 1 metre length in half. So I've got my little loop at the end, so I can use for my loop start. Which is what I'm going to do in here. So now I've got a slightly more visible colour. I can show you the railroading as well. I can when I reach the end of the row. I'm not going to do this bottom. I'm not going to railroad these bottom arms. So I didn't mention that I didn't tell you what date it was, and I don't know, it's Bank Holiday Monday in August, and I actually have no idea what the date is. This is what happens when you get a long weekend, and I have no clue what the date is. But it's been very nice to have the extra day to do some stitching. So it's now late-ish in the afternoon, and as I'm stitching this, lovely husband Dr. Tim is downstairs playing on the PlayStation 5, so he's having a lovely time. It's actually sunny again in the UK. It doesn't feel like we've had the most sunshine this summer, but it is quite nice at the moment, which is ironically less good for filming because I prefer to keep the window and door shut so that I don't get all sorts of odd noises. It does make it quite warm in here while I'm filming. And I've just finished my row and haven't shown you the railroading. I will get to that. But we've been out for a walk this morning, which was really nice. So we live in a part of the UK called Gloucestershire, which is a very beautiful countryside, a lot of it. And we're lucky to live. We live in a small town, fairly near to Stroud, if anyone knows where that is. And we're extremely lucky with where we live because, say, we do have this beautiful countryside. We have lovely, lovely views straight from our house, and we can just do some beautiful walking straight out of my doorstep. So we've walked today in beautiful hills and fields and woods, and it was all really rather lovely. And we do like to do that. It's something that we do quite a lot, is going out and walking. Okay, so I'm coming back across the row, and now you'll see this is where I'm railroading. So basically all it means is that I'm going to put my needle between the two strands of thread, if you can see it, before I go back down through the hole. I can't do it now I'm talking about it. I do it without even thinking about it. And then as soon as I actually start to give it any thought, suddenly I can't do it. So other than walking, we do spend a bit of time with watching YouTube videos, and obviously, as I say, Tim will enjoy playing games, which is great because obviously I can happily do stitching while he's doing that, or I can take myself off and go and watch FlossTube videos. But we both enjoy watching films as well, and watching TV shows. We often watch dramas and things that we'll watch in the evening, and I don't stitch while I'm watching those. I prefer to be properly watching for something like that. We both enjoy reading, so sometimes in the evenings, and quite often in the evening, as we'll head up to bed, we'll go and sit and read. Sometimes something different. Sometimes it's quite fun. We do read the same book at the same time, and then we can chat about it. We tend to both particularly enjoy reading sci-fi. Well, not so much sci-fi, more fantasy. Right, this looks like I'm coming towards the end of this section. Now, I think this is where I'm probably going to have to leave a small gap. Actually, I'm not going to leave that gap. What I'm going to do is leave this thread hanging, I think. I'll have a closer look at the pattern in a minute and decide. Oh, I meant to do 2 stitches there, but that's fine. Put that one back in. Now, this is where I'm just debating. Do you know what, it's not going to be worth. I'm going to leave a gap on this one. So I said I wouldn't usually, but I've only got 2 more stitches of this dark pink to do, and it's going to be really silly to leave the thread hanging out there. I'm just looking, there's just 2 white stitches in here. But I think it won't make sense to leave the thread hanging for those, just for those 2 dark pink stitches. So I think I'll leave that there. Now I could park this thread, but I think it's going to get tangled. I could park this because there's going to be more up here, but again, I'm not going to get back to it anytime soon, and I'll probably just tangle the thread up if I leave it on there. So I do find a lot of the time I would probably rather finish the thread and keep it out of the way rather than leaving it hanging out on the front here, unless it's really, really nicely out of the way. Right, so again, if I was going to show you marking off on here, I've now done, hopefully correctly, all of that one. If it's individuals, I often mark them with a little diagonal, seems to be the easiest way to mark them off. So I could come in and start stitching this. Actually, I might come and stitch this black bit up here because I think it might be interesting to show you how I'm doing that bit up there. So let's come out. I've got a bit of the black thread that I had left over from here, and I think that's probably long enough. Much as I love my loop start, I'm also not going to waste a bit of thread. So we'll just do the good old run it through the back of a few stitches. Make sure I'm not pulling it through. So what else? I was talking about various hobbies and things that lovely husband Dr. Tim and I enjoy doing. Well, there's gardening as well, which I don't do as much of as I was going to say I should, but if you've seen any of my other videos, you'll know I will not should on myself. I think the gardening just loses out a little bit to stitching, unsurprisingly. But I do enjoy it. I think I get a bit stressed out by gardening sometimes because a lot of the plants, I like things to be nice and kind of neat and ordered, and gardening isn't really like that sometimes. Plants obviously will just do what they want to do, and I get a bit frustrated when they don't stay looking as neat as I'd like them to. So I do enjoy it, but yeah, I have to get my brain around the fact that, you know, gardening, it will do its own thing. But again, we're very lucky. We don't have an enormous garden, but I do enjoy what we have. We've got some lovely planting beds, all sorts of different lovely plants in them, and we've got a pond, which is fantastic. I'd never had a pond until we moved into our current house 3 years ago. And the garden, there was nothing there really 3 years ago when we moved in, and we've made the garden all ourselves, and I absolutely love it, especially the pond. It's a triumph. Now I'm going to put my needle, I'm going to keep this black thread because there's a few stitches just up here that I want to be able to stitch with this. I want to keep this out of the way, so I'm actually going to put it, this is where a bead's going to go, so I can just stick it there. and the thread down the back is running down there, so it's not going to get in the way if I pop it down there. I don't want to put it anywhere up here because I'm going to be stitching up there in a bit, so I don't want it in the way. I'm going to put it down there. And then I'm going to come back in. Now, I'm going back to this. I have got a bit of this dark pink left from when I stitched the bit over here, but I'm going to take a new piece because I don't think the bit I've got left will be sufficient. And I think we actually can. I think we can potentially park this up and use it for a couple of bits. Yeah. Needle threading. That is the downside of stitching a bit like this, where you're doing lots of colour changes. It's always going to be lots of threading your needle. So yes, gardening is definitely one of my things I love, but probably don't spend as much time on. Oh no, I just said should, didn't I? Bad cat. So easily done, isn't it? I do enjoy sitting out there. In fact, it's quite nice. If I wasn't doing this right now, I could quite easily be sat in the garden with a gin and tonic. I mean, I could have planned and brought a gin and tonic up here with me as well, couldn't I? So it's late enough in the afternoon that it would be, I think a gin and tonic would be perfectly acceptable. To be fair, I'm not going to judge anyone for a gin and tonic at any time of the day, but especially by now. And as I sit here getting quite toasty, I'm actually feeling like a gin and tonic would have been a good idea. Might do that for next time. Although it's not always the best idea for your stitching, is it? I do like a little drink, but yeah, there does come a point if you've had a few little drinks that you're stitching. You might think it's going beautifully, but the next morning might not look quite so good. Now I might just count this because I've kind of just been winging this and I don't know if I've actually done the right number. 1, 2, 3, 8. Oh, and I meant to stitch 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. I meant to stitch one while I was all the way over there. Do you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm actually going to undo that, because there's a stitch over here that I was going to do while I was over there, and if I don't stick with the plan, that'll do. If I don't stick with the plan, I'll have to go back and put it in later, so I don't really want to do that. Good news though, that was the right number of stitches. So this is the other thing that I tend to do, is that I very often, I don't, unless I really need to, obviously you have to sometimes, it is called counted cross stitch. I don't always count. I just kind of work off of the visual in my head and of where the stitches are that I've already done. So I didn't count this row of pink stitches. I just know that it would go all the way along minus one black stitch. So I know it goes all the way along apart from one. Now that does make it a little bit quicker, because if you're not counting, you're just working your stitches based off of everything else you've already stitched. That's fine, as long as you haven't already made a mistake. And to be fair, it usually does work out pretty well for me. And I will go in and count every now and then just to check that I haven't suddenly done something horrendous. And I'll often check things against rather than counting, I sort of check positions of things against other stitches rather than actively counting. I don't know why, that just tends to be how I've always done it, really. I think it's because I'm quite a visual person. It is that sort of pattern element to it that I'm following. Now, that was all of that, but I know I'm going to need that pink back up here. So, on this instance, actually, I'm going to just stick my thread out over there, back in some stitches. You're not going to see that by the time I've done any more. So this is an area where I'm going to do this with a few of the threads and do a little bit of parking my threads up so that I can come back to them. I can guarantee I'm not going to have enough time unless I want to make a 3-hour video for you. I'm probably not going to have enough time to show you everything, but that's fine because I can just come back and do more videos another time. So someone did ask as well about my stitchy setup and how I set things up to stitch. Now I've got it a little bit different up here than I normally would, but it's pretty similar. This isn't my normal stitching spot. I've come upstairs to what we call the library to do this stitching, but I would normally stitch downstairs in the lounge so that lovely husband Dr. Tim and I can spend some time together. But it's quite similar. I'll be sat on the sofa. I might be sat with my legs stretched out in front of me up on the puff, but pretty similar to this kind of setup with it on my lap. And I'll have my chart off to that side. And then I'll usually have my threads. At the moment, I've got my threads sitting to the right of me just because there's space on the sofa. There wouldn't be downstairs because that would be where lovely husband Dr. Tim is. And I don't think he'd appreciate sitting there with a lap full of threads. So if I'm downstairs, they'll be sat on the arm of the sofa to the left-hand side of me instead. And I will usually balance my scissors over there as well. Again, today, just for ease, I've got them on the right-hand side of me, but they'd usually be on my left. It actually would be easier if they were on my right, because since I'm right-handed, this is the hand I'm going to pick my scissors up with. But needs must. I do put them on the other side of me, I admit, if Tim's not there. But otherwise, that all kind of goes to the left of me. I have to say, I do enjoy stitching with these pinks. It is, as some of you may know, pink is my favourite colour, so that always makes me very happy. Now, I have missed one, not missed, but there's one stitch over here that I haven't got to. But I think for this one, I'm actually going to park this one up here. Yeah, that's actually where I'm going to need that next. So let's have a little look at our pattern. And I've done, let's mark these off here. So I've done this row here, I've done that one there, that one, and that one. So there's a stitch here that I did leave, but I think I will get to that one when I've stitched these ones. So that will be fine. So we've just got a few little stitches in the very light pink. So I've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stitches. So I don't necessarily want to take an entire piece for that. I could, and sometimes I'll use a small piece and I'll just loop start with a really small bit. In fact, I'm debating if this is long enough. I reckon that's long enough. That is a double piece, but I'm going to take one strand. Now this is going to be, this might be a little bit tight, but I'm taking one strand off that, and I reckon I can eke 7 stitches out of this little piece. Well, we'll find out, won't we? Now I'm going to start from the back for this stitch. You can loop start in a completely surrounded stitch like that, but sometimes it's a little more tricky to get that loop to pop through to the back and to look neat. So I'll go back to a good old-fashioned loop start from the back. Right, place your bets, people. Can I finish? Have I estimated correctly? Can I get, well, 6 more stitches out of this? Is it 6? I better make sure I've counted this correctly as well. It's very satisfying when you can estimate it correctly and just take a little piece, and it's just what you need for those few stitches. And trust me, I've got it wrong on multiple occasions, but more often than not, I'll get it right. So that's why I keep doing it. Oh, that was pretty easy actually, wasn't it? Look, I've not even really played thread checking with that one, have I? Yeah, that was very easily 7 stitches. Look at that. That's how much I've got left. That's, yeah, not even a problem. Right, so having done that bit, now we can come back to, I'm going to come back to, yeah, just debating whether to do, I think I'm going to do the heart first and then come back to this one. So I've now got threads parked in all sorts of different places on here. I've got one parked in a gap, I've got one parked out here just in the middle of stitching, and I've got one parked up where it's actually going to be used. But we're going to take this one, so we'll just pull that back out. And then I'm going to work out where I need to take that. So I want to take it to start stitching there. But rather than just push that through like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over and just see how far that thread's running. So that's not too bad. I've got to go from here to here. But in the interests of keeping it neat, I'm just going to run that underneath there, and that just catches it down. It is one of those things, I really don't mind running threads, but I really prefer to be able to catch them down as I go under the back. unless it's going a really, really short distance. So hope you can start to see how I'm working on here and working each little bit. For me, I wouldn't, for example, have stitched this dark pink here and then skipped this and just done this. I know it's only a few rows above, and I know it's more fiddly, but I would much rather stitch the dark pink at the bottom, then stitch these, and then come back to the dark pink to come up to here. And that really is that's just the way my brain works. It's the way it likes to stitch. And yes, there's a little bit of not necessarily leaving gaps so much, but you can't 100% stitch absolutely everything without it being a complete nuisance. Well, as a first, apparently my camera decided to turn itself off because it had overheated. I did say it was quite warm in here, didn't I? And I then popped the camera, I turned it off, turned it back on again, thought I'd restart, and I forgot to press record. So I've just whittled away to myself for a few minutes, which was fun. But I did, in that time, I just finished stitching this dark section. And then what I've done, I've rethreaded my needle with the pink that I'd parked up here. So let's just finish this. Let's see if the camera will just survive while I finish stitching maybe these couple of stitches. And then I think it's probably telling me that I need to call it a day. And it doesn't feel like we've stitched all that much, although I suspect if I had a look, actually, it's probably not too bad. If you guys have been to a Stitchy retreat day, you'll know that normally stitching and talking is not a huge problem, but if you're thinking a lot more about what you're saying, like for video, then yeah, suddenly stitching and talking becomes difficult. Stitching and talking and counting. That's just too many things, isn't it? Okay, so that is that little bit done as well. I haven't got any more of this colour anywhere near here, so just finish off that little thread there. So that's where we are with that. So I've still got my black thread down here, and in fact that's the next bit I will do. I'll show you what I'm doing with that one. I probably won't finish this, but I'm going to pick that thread back out. And this is another one I'm going to run it over because I want to take it all the way over here. And that's a long way. That is definitely too far for this to go. No, and that one, and that one. So I'm just going to run under. I'm running under 3 stitches on the way there, And that'll just keep it nicely flat on the back. And then I can come up here to stitch these 4 stitches. And then I might keep this one. I don't know, actually there's not a lot left of this thread, so I might finish it at that point. I have got some more stitches to work in the black, but I've got quite a bit of other stitching before I get to it. And I think I'm going to run out. Oh, I forgot to come back and do that stitch, didn't I? Well, what did I say about stitching and talking and counting? And I meant to, when I was doing these stitches, I meant to pop in and do that one there that I have now missed. Well, that's fun. I'll just have to go and fill that back in. I think I'm going to leave that black thread. I'm going to end it there. There's not a lot left. There's not a huge amount left on it. I think we'll just end it. So I've got the joy. I'm going to come and put that one stitch back in there at some point. But yeah, let's have a little look where we're at with this now. So I've done, that's those ones. There's that one hanging out there that I've missed. And I've done all of that. So now I can continue working this section of box here. So once I've worked this out here, then I'll put in this. I can work the green up here, and I will work this one again. So if I was doing this green section, I would take this little shamrock symbol and stitch those 4, leave the thread parked up somewhere, probably stick it out over there. Then stitch this little sort of half moon symbol, again leave the thread parked, stitch that. Then I can pick back up the shamrock symbol to come and do this bit. And then finish it, and then I can pick this one up that I've parked and come and do that one up there as well. So that's really how I'm going to keep working, just sort of up and across and slowly filling it all in. So let's, wrong way, I was going to zoom out and get another little look at the beautiful Sorceress. And yeah, we've added a little bit more to the box. So I hope that's been useful. Please do let me know in the comments if there's anything else that you'd like me to see, or if I was really confusing about anything, let me know because I can show it again. As I say, this was only my second stitch with me, but I am planning for this to be something that I do at least semi-regularly. And yes, I do think I will be getting Chromatic Dragon out for the next one because there've been a few calls for that, so I would love to show that to you. And then we get to see how I deal with confetti, minus the swearing. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'll be back again soon. Until then, happy stitching and bye for now.